Welcome back to another episode of Sales Transformation, brought to you by Ledium. In today's episode, our host Colin Mitchell sits down with sales guru Bowen Moody to discuss his experience of transitioning from product management to sales and the importance of being a self-taught salesperson. So grab your notepad and let's begin.
All right, welcome to another episode of Sales Transformation. Super pumped up to have a guest on today, joining us it's his evening time over there. So I'm just getting my day started over here on the West Coast. We've got Bowen Moody. He's a sales guru, AI mastermind behind Wonderway. With his AI coach, sales reps get instant feedback after every call, driving success. Bowen, how you doing? Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for getting up early to take the call. I'm based in Germany, so a little bit tricky to make the time zones match for San Francisco, but thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. We planned out a couple of things that we're going to talk about today, but before we kind of get into the first topic of how to survive in tough times where, a lot of people are struggling in today's environment. It's a bloodbath out there, trying to sell and survive, especially as, a startup founder yourself. But just give us a little bit of background on yourself and kind of, how you started Wonderway.
Yeah, for sure. So, I guess I'm maybe a little bit different to some of the other people you have on the podcast in that I got into sales relatively recently. I've been listening to your show and I hear most people, they say that they started in sales when they were 3 years old or 5 years old. For me, it was a bit of a later career switch. Prior, like when I started my career, I was actually working in product management, and then got into sales when I started my own company. So, coming out of a product manager, starting my own company and just basically being forced to sell, as you'd know, having started a few companies yourself. As a CEO, it's basically all about sales to begin with. So I'm very much a self-taught salesperson. And I think like most people out there, I'm a self-taught salesperson. So basically just had to figure it out as I go, failing on a lot of calls and teaching myself on YouTube videos and articles. The first company that I started was an education technology company that was helping more company-wide. And basically we weren't able to find traction on that product. So we started speaking to our customers and trying to understand what the biggest pain point there was in workplace training, and everyone pointed towards the sales team, and especially like reducing ramp time. So we pivoted and for the last few years, we've been building sales onboarding software. So I think although I didn't originally have a sales background, there were kind of two things that came together at once: my own personal journey of training myself to be a salesperson, and then also hearing customers and companies talk about how difficult it is to train salespeople and how much of a pain point this can be. Both of these kind of things kind of collided and led me down the path to build a sales training company, which is a bit of an odd. I never would have thought I'd find myself in that direction, but that's what I've been doing for the last few years. So basically, with Wonderway, we were building onboarding software, helping companies to reduce ramp time for sales reps. We raised a seed round, sort of at the beginning of last year, and then shortly after raising the seed round, scaling up the team. Then we went straight into a recession, and everybody stopped onboarding salespeople. So we had a bit of a rocky ride after raising the seed round. And I can maybe share a little bit about how we've handled this recession, and especially I think everyone who's listening to this podcast is probably, if you're working in sales, I'm sure you felt the effects of the recession. But I think for us, repeatable. And then once there was something there, then I could hire people to follow that and I guess also help me take it to the next level. But yeah, so just to answer the question, I think the biggest challenge is trying to figure out what is the most valuable stuff to spend your time on.
Yeah, I think that's a challenge for a lot of people, right? Because there's just so much noise out there, right? And people are often looking for the silver bullet, right? Or the one size fits all. And the problem is like, there's a lot of these folks out there sharing, only do this, or, this is the best way to do this, or, the number one, whatever, fill in the blank, right? And the problem with this is that's based on their experience, right? The problem they're solving, their ICP, the maturity of their company, their, how well known their brand is or isn't, right? And there's just so many different variables. And so I think the thing that's important for, founders that are selling or even people that are newer to sales is try to have your own experience a little bit, right? And test out different things and, try to block out the noise and also, validate who you're getting your information from. Because there's a lot of people sharing a lot of stuff that they don't necessarily have the experience or track record to be, out there saying that this is how you should do whatever it is that they're, preaching.
Yeah, but I think the thing that's amazing about sales compared to some other roles, especially if you're working in a bit more of a high velocity type role, is that you can just experiment so fast. I mean, you can literally read something in the morning, jump on calls and try it, that day, and you can be iterating call on call. So, I mean, I think that's something that I really, really like about sales compared to other jobs is I think you've got a lot of opportunities to practice. And like, I know you do daily podcasts. And I think it's one of the few places where, like, few industries where this works because you can literally learn something in the morning and apply it on your calls that day, see if it works, if it improves things, and then, either double down on it or move on to something else the next day. So I think, having that constant opportunity to practice is also one of the great things about sales. But yeah, I think you need both. You need to be having the guidance. You can't just figure it all out on your own, or you don't need to, because there's a lot of people that have thought about this. A lot of very smart people that spend a long time thinking about sales. So I think you want to take the best practices and then apply it to your own process to see how it works.
Yeah. So I mean, tell me some things. What have helped you as a founder? Learning how to sell for the first time. In a tough sales environment where people are a little more reluctant to invest in tech right now. And what are some things that have kept you going and been some key lessons?
Yeah, so for us, it hasn't been so much about the sales skills for us. I think we had this issue with the product market fit and, the market being not as many people needing a onboarding tool at the moment. So we raised the seed round, we were selling an onboarding tool, saw that there was less demand for this tool. So for us, it was really like, okay, what are we going to do here? Are we going to, like, one of our investors basically told me as soon as the news of the recession came, he basically told me, like, fire everyone in the team and wait it out. and I think that maybe we saw some of this behavior as well, that people kind of fire people first and ask questions later. Other investors were saying, you need to lean in here and you need to push hard. And I think it is a confusing time for a lot of founders and a lot of companies. But in our case, we didn't want to just sit around and wait. I mean, in that time, who knows where the market moves? So for us, it was a lot about like shifting our product direction and moving away from sales onboarding. I mean, we still do it. We still have that product, but launching a new product that's more focusing on continuous training and helping people like improve their close rates. So that's basically what we've been working on over the last year is like shifting more towards something that the companies need. Maybe they're not hiring as many salespeople as they were a year or two ago, but everyone's looking at ways, okay, how can we do more with less? How can we, get the existing people in the sales team to close more? And that's really been our focus as a company, is making that shift, and building that product out and getting that value proposition to land right. So that's been the real focus for us. Is like, again, I guess we could have like played defense, but we've tried to play offense and lent into it and tried to sort of shift the problems we're solving and the value props to our customers, to sort of, follow the market as it's changing.
Yeah. I think the key thing there is like, be listening, right, to what your customers are saying and, help you pivot and go in the direction in a tough market where, you may think that, I think this is tough, especially for a lot of founders, right? They think they they know exactly what problem, people want to solve, and they quickly find out that, maybe it's something different, or maybe the market's not ready, or the market has shifted. And so being able to, be flexible to pivot and go in a direction where you can start to have some success, I think is really important.
Yeah. So, and a couple of learnings I had along the way. I think that was, actually the original question you asked. I think the first one is that being flexible as well. Like, we had this hypothesis that companies were going to increase win rates and things like that. So our initial idea was that we were going to, I mentioned this problem around finding content. So we're actually going to curate content. We're going to aggregate content, curate it, help companies to identify gaps based on CRM data, and then recommend content to people that was going to help them with their specific problems that we're having. So that was our first idea that we started working on for the sort of 6 months, maybe the second half of last year. And then we saw this ChatGPT get released, and suddenly we thought, hey, like the same problem we're working on right now with recommending books and articles and YouTube videos and stuff like that, like, is this actually the best way to be doing it? And now with ChatGPT, rather than recommending 20-minute videos, maybe we can actually just we can use ChatGPT to generate like specific recommendations for people. So rather than recommending content, it could actually be consuming all that content and then just giving bite-sized pieces of advice to people using generative AI. So I think one thing was like, we sort of shifted our focus, launched a new product, worked on it for 6 months, and we basically ended up throwing it all away and starting again when Gen AI came out. So and it took me probably too long to figure out like the product we were building wasn't the right one. And I think, when we pivoted and focused on this new product, then I went back in and basically did, for the new product, I'm doing all the sales myself. So I'm speaking to the customers every day, trying to find product market fit, hearing about what's working well, what isn't. And I think that's just, for an early stage founder, I think that's just super important, is that you need to be talking to customers. And if you're trying to do it from, relying on secondhand feedback from the sales reps, it's not, you really need to be talking to people every day, and you need to feel it for yourself. So that was definitely a mistake I made, which I haven't made the second time around.
I think that's a super valuable learning lesson, right, for founders, especially founders that come from more of a product background or more of a technical background, and might think like, oh no, I'm not the right person to be in the sales seat. But it's essential to, your business surviving, and, being on the front lines, getting that feedback, getting it as real time as possible to be able to make changes and, dictate the product map based on what people are saying. It can be a matter of going out of business or your business surviving and maybe even thriving.
But it is a hard shift to make. I mean, once you get used to managing a team and getting off the calls, and I guess you can get kind of maybe you think, okay, I've kind of progressed past that now. Like I was an individual contributor, now I've earned the right to build up a team, and maybe I don't want to go back to doing calls, but yeah, I mean, I've actually loved going back. I mean, I actually love going back and talking to customers every day. The one thing that drives me crazy is no-shows. That's even more annoying when you're the CEO and you're trying to, you're trying to turn the company around, and you get people not showing up during the day. That's tough. But other than that, I love talking to customers every day. But I think there's a lot of people who maybe would be unwilling to sort of, go back to the earlier days once they feel like they've graduated past that. But it's just so important, which I think is obvious. It's in every startup book. But I think making the transition to to come back into being, customer facing can be tough for some people.
Nobody likes no shows, but unfortunately it's part of the job. Well, hey, I really appreciate you coming on today, sharing a little bit about your story and, how you've, pivoted and survived during today's, sort of rocky environment out there today. What's any final thoughts? And then where's kind of the best place for people to learn more or get in touch with you?
No final thoughts, but I think, the best place to get in touch with me is probably LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out. I guess you can find me on LinkedIn, Bowen Moody. Feel free to add me. If you do, please drop in and send me a message to let me know you came from this podcast. It's always interesting to hear where you heard about this. So, I'd love to hear from you if you've got any questions or, you're going through a similar experience, then, maybe we can give each other support through this tough time as well. Thanks for having me on the show, Colin.
Awesome. Appreciate it. We'll include the links there in the show notes to make it easy for everybody. If you enjoyed today's episode, please write us a review, share the show with your friends. And we're always listening for your feedback as well. It really helps us when you share the show with your friends so that we can reach more sellers and help transform the way that they sell.